Hi ladies and gentlemen, hey, it's April 3rd, 2013, and this is going to be one of my more serious videos. I'm not going to lose my temper. This is much too important for that. I want to give you a little background before I get started. This might be a little long, the whole thing, and I'll try to shorten it up as much as I can. You know, as I've told you and as you probably are aware, I was an Army officer for about 28 years, okay? Military police, and I did some work in military intelligence as well. I was a garden plot commander. Some of you will know what that is. I was a nuclear chemical accident incident control officer. I was also part of the NATO team that went into Eastern Europe. I'll refrain from saying much more about that. And you know, I've been around. I've done a lot of things. Went to South America. Went to Asia. I've seen a lot. I've been exposed to a lot. I've worked for some really high-ranking people, elbow to elbow. I'm not a great officer, okay? Kind of mediocre in a lot of ways, but I learned a lot. I paid attention. I learned my job, and worked with special forces. I'm not special forces, never was. But being in the type of positions that I had, I worked very closely with them on a number of occasions. So I'll just leave it at that. Why do I say all this? Because I just want you to know a little bit about my background so that you'll know that I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. Okay, so now we're going to get real serious. Before war starts, or as it's starting to wind up, one of the first things that happens is propaganda. You know, truth is the first casualty of war. And psychological operations, all right, to try to win hearts and minds, to try to defeat the enemy's will, demonize them. You know, in Nazi Germany, they picked on the Jews because everybody kind of disliked them anyway. The Jews were never really a military threat to the Nazis, but they were an easy scapegoat. So they started to say things bad about this particular group of people, to demonize them, so that then they could have a reason to do actions against them. Okay? Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking primarily to the vets right now, okay? And to active military. Active military first, you know, you went in for whatever reason you did. Some went in for a paycheck. Some went in because you really do have a love for, you know, the Constitution and all that, which, by the way, you're not supporting, whether you believe it or not. I think you'll find out that that's not what's happening. But the point is I think your intentions were good by and large. Some of you not so. You know, the military's actively sought to get gang members in there, criminals, and if you weren't one when you went in, they make you one when you're there by doing such things as torture, you know, secret killings, those kinds of things. And I could go into more detail, but I'll refrain from that, okay? I think you know what I'm talking about. The point is here, that what I want to say is this. If you don't play hardball with the uppity-ups, the big brass, the CIA, let's say that you have a conscience, and you're active military, you're already on a list saying that you're not a game player, okay? And when you return home, like all of the other vets now that are going through this, you're going to be on a list of non-cooperatives, okay? And those are the kinds of people that are now receiving those letters, those VA letters, saying that they can't have weapons, or they're being called in on wellness checks and then being found psychologically incompetent, even if they aren't, even by simple physical disabilities. Whatever. The point is that there is an active campaign that once you return to the United States, because you've seen what the military does overseas, and you'll recognize that that same thing is happening here in this country. As a vet, as a trained military professional, you are going to see things happening and wonder what you should do about it if you took your oath of office seriously. So that's why the DHS has categorized us, the vets, as the #1 domestic terrorist. Okay? That's number one. And that's come out in the mainstream news. Go check it. All right? Go check it. I talked about it a lot here. I'm not going to go any further into that. But now what we're seeing is more of this propaganda demonization campaign that tells you who the enemy is. Okay? Founding Fathers, the TV show Founding Fathers is a good example. I got to look up this other one because I don't watch TV. The Following. And apparently there are about 5 or 6 others that are on television, not to mention the stuff that's in the news. You know, we have the Christopher Dorner thing in L.A. You know, they showed his pictures in his military uniform, not in his police uniform. Do you see what's happening here? You know, you're encouraged to join the military, go over and put your time in, sometimes 5, 6, 7 tours, and then you come back and you're considered a domestic terrorist. And they're going to do everything they can to take your rights away from you. Do you see that? And especially you people in the active duty military. I'm speaking specifically to you right now because you might carry out some of these orders against your fellow veterans, your fellow brothers in arms, and then that same thing's going to happen to you when you're in their shoes. You got to wake up to what's happening here, guys and girls. And again, you know I don't like girls in the military. I'm right up front about that. You know, for lots of reasons. And I'm not going to go there today. We can argue about that some other time. But just vets as a whole right now, I'll just tell you that I'm concerned about your welfare and mine. Okay, I know people that have gotten these letters calling them in. All right? We saw the Marine Brandon Robb, you know, last fall, who was pulled in by the police because he had a little posting on Facebook that he disagreed with the government. And they put him in a psychological evaluation. They were going to commit him, and if he had any guns, I don't know if he did, but they were going to obviously take those. Now we have another, and this gentleman is a Navy vet, and his name is Schmecker, I believe. Let's see if I can find it here. I'm sorry I didn't have this prepared. David Schmecker, yes. It's happened to him. All right, same kind of thing. Wellness check, he didn't show up, so they sent the cops out to pick him up, take him in. They took his guns. Now, I don't know the whole story in either one of these, but seeing what's going on in the media, you know, we have our estimate of the situation, guys. We're seeing these things happen, the propaganda, the demonization of the enemy. That should tell you who the enemy is in the eyes of our own government. It's us. All right? So the very start of this video, I wanted to bring that up. And I've got some other things I want to say, but I'm going to go here. And you guys who are listening, I hope will understand. I think you will. You're well trained. That's one thing they did do for us, didn't they? Okay. This is what I want to tell you. I'm not advocating taking up arms. I'm not saying that. But you need an alert system, because this is going to become more and more commonplace. They'll probably do it piecemeal here and there to test the waters, beta test, and to make it so that they select the time and place when they come and get you. But they're going to come and get you. So, you need an alert system. You need an alert roster. Okay? Put that together right away. Get local vets in the area that you can trust. And I'm not kidding myself. I know a lot of these people are company men. You know, they're spies. Okay? I know they're going to be that way, but you still have to try to put together this thing, okay, for our own safety. Get together your alert roster, numbers, names, okay? You want to do that. It's very, very important. You want to do an IPB, okay? You want to put together an estimate of the situation, friendly and enemy forces. All right? Especially the enemy situation, watching what's going on in your area. And when I say the enemy, of course, I mean our own government now. It's really come down to that. Police, the military, the psychological people at the VA, you know, all this stuff. It's really getting out of hand. Yeah. Well, let me just keep on with this. Do your Mett-T. Assign tasks. Develop COAs. Designate some staging areas and some rally points. I'm not going to say any more. Those who understand, just do it, okay? Again, I'm not calling for any action. This is to protect us in case, You know, one guy gets raided, he can have an alert roster, alert everybody else, and in your local area you can decide what to do, but the least you should do is be able to get out of the way. All right? I'm sorry I have to go there, but it's really that time, ladies and gentlemen. It really, really is. You know, the indications in the propaganda psychological campaign is the Civil War, you know, the war against the American people isn't being prepared. It's already started. So, talking about those specific actions that you can take right now, you'll understand how imperative that is. For those that are out there, pass this along, please. All right. Okay. I'm going to kind of segue here into the DHS purchase of all this ammunition and the armored vehicles and all that. Okay. You know, think about it. The regular citizen doesn't have any chance of standing up against anything like that. That's obviously against us in particular. Okay? Think about it. And they're not going to play with you according to the laws of the rules of the law of war. They're going to use hollow point ammunition and anything else they can if you resist their takeover of your weapons. Okay? Or try to take you to the hospital. So I'm not saying to fight them, but they're expecting it. Along that same line, DHS taking all this ammunition and stockpiling it. Remember what you do to your enemy. You raid their supply lines, their logistical support, so that they can't sustain the battle. Do you see what's happening here? Monsanto Food Protection Act, what they're doing to the food supply. Ammunition's the first part of that, of course. They're interdicting our supply lines, guys. That's exactly what this is. It started already. They're getting ready to do it. Okay. Let me go back now to what I want to talk about on the entire situation that's going on. But you guys that are vets, you should know exactly where I'm coming from. This is a brothers in arms thing. We need to take care of each other, and you know that me doing this is not really in my best interests. Pass this along. I have a very, very small viewership. It doesn't matter. I'm not looking for this for me. I want you to get this information out. It's time. You know, there are oath keepers out there, and there are a lot of groups that are already doing this. There are groups of Navy SEALs and special forces that see this coming, and they've already separated themselves, and I'm sure the government knows where they are, but they have a support system. Most of the rest of us do not. So you got to put together these alert rosters and, you know, those things I was talking about. Okay. I already talked about founding fathers and the following. Why is the media doing that? Why are people finding, you know, remember the idiots in this country that you went out and bled and died for, you know, they're watching these television shows that are now considering you to be the enemy. Mainstream media, guys, are doing this. And the VA is acting on it. They're looking for a scapegoat and somebody to start the war with. All right. You know, these television shows keep equating vets with joining Al Qaeda. We just had that one Navy guy who, you know, he made the news over in Syria that he was, you know, joining the Syrian rebel forces who are Al Qaeda, and our government proved that because they just went and arrested him at his home here in the States, claiming that he used weapons for and in behalf of Al Qaeda in Syria. Yeah, right. So the Syrian rebels are Al Qaeda. This guy is either a CIA plant to demonize vets again, or he's just a stupid patsy. Okay? Either way, they use that to say, see, vets are joining with Al Qaeda and they're going to do those things here. Do you see this happening? Okay. Enough on that. I'm going to go through some of the other things that concern me. Back when the Fukushima thing happened, I notified a lot of people about what to try to do to protect themselves. Again, I was a nuclear chemical accidents and control officer. I know what I'm talking about, right? And a lot of these people took me serious, but a lot of them laughed at me. As most of you in the military know, radiation is cumulative in your system. You know, it might not kill you right away, but if you get enough over a period of time, you get your lifetime dose and you're done, okay? Or you have organ failure or other things, right? Well, that Fukushima effect is now showing up in children on the West Coast. 30% of the kids born in a specific time period there right after Fukushima, where they would have gotten the worst of that fallout, are now coming up with thyroid problems. Oh, yeah, right? Radioactive isotope of iodine, yeah. Cesium, all these other things. And there'll be more problems coming down the line as time goes on and people start to have the effects of that radiation. So, you know, the people that didn't take it seriously, the government, FEMA, tried to cover it up, raise the radioactive safety level so that they didn't have to deal with it, didn't have to alarm the public. Rather than alarming the public, and you know, all of the Homeland Security people had the TheraSafe on, so they were guarding themselves and they were getting their iodine, but they didn't give it to the regular population. Our government doesn't protect our people; it protects itself, and that's it. So I wrote out an email today, some friends saying, you know, I'm vindicated. Here we are, 2 years later, and the effects are there. And I'm sure they've been here for some time, but now they're starting to admit it. Okay. This is very disturbing, and I don't know what to make of it. You know, there's so much misinformation, disinformation, propaganda. You know, all of the intelligence, you know, manipulations of what's going on. But I do recall that North Korea fired an orbital satellite back towards the end of last year. Now, I still don't know. I don't know the technical particulars of that. I don't know if it was capable of carrying a small nuclear device. I don't know that. But there seems to be a concern whether this is propaganda again to get us all worried or whether there's something to it. But considering the North Koreans and their bravado, I think there might be something to this. Okay? That there is this orbiting satellite that has a nuclear payload on it. It's not capable of re-entry into the atmosphere and hitting a city. What is it for? EMP. And that's what they're talking about. If this thing goes off anywhere in the country, and it, you know, north, south, east, or west, but it's going to take out, depending upon its placement, if it goes off, one way or another, either because we set it off trying to stop it, or the North Koreans do it by the push of the button, whatever. EMP is going to take out electrical power grids in a sweeping area, thousands of miles, and you know what I'm talking about. Airplanes will fall out of the sky, cars that are running will stop running. You know, your electricity in your house won't work. Your computers will be fried. You know what the story is, unless you have EMP protection. Of course, most of us don't. So this is a real threat. So there's something here that North Korea might have up their sleeve. Where they got this thing, who knows? You know, we gave them the missile technology back in the 90s. For all we know, somebody in our government could give it to them. Those 50 missing suitcase nukes, you know? Like I said, the SF forces could bring those things in. And yeah, I know we have radiation detectors, like that thing in Chicago where, you know, Homeland Security, you know, registered some radiation. They talked to this guy who apparently had some kind of a test or whatever. It was still in his system. But, you know, there are ways to circumvent that, okay? Especially if you're well funded and you know what you're doing. Okay, so just to give you an example on this, there was a Representative Roscoe Bartlett from Maryland, Republican from Maryland. This was his quote. It would bring down, talking about this EMP explosion, it would bring down the whole grid and cost between $1 to $2 trillion to repair. Full recovery could take up to 10 years. Do you see why you need food and water? Just think, if trucks can't deliver, you know, and the freezers are all off and they're thawed out, you know, you need food and water and a way to try to survive for a couple of months, at least. Okay? Serious stuff here, guys. This is serious. You know, I told you about the Chinese army, you know, massing on the North Korean border. I think most everybody knows that now. Who really knows what their plans are? But one thing's for sure, they want to take us down. The Chinese said back in December that they wanted a protracted war against American gun owners. Why? Because then they'll have free reign here. The banksters cover their tracks with war. The economy is coming down. $85 billion a month bubble, you know, trillions of dollars in this bubble, the quadrillions, you know, worldwide, you know, things that are happening here. You start a war, Terrible thing. You start a war, kill people so that you can hide, the financial collapse that you've engineered. But they're doing it. Makes you sick, doesn't it? It's a cover story to keep people concerned about war. And not that it isn't of concern, but they engineer both parts, the fall and the war. Full spectrum dominance. It's the bad thing about being a historian. I hear all these people, and I'm diverging a little bit more, hear all these people, talk about, they want gun control, Connecticut, let's do this, let's do that. I have something to tell you folks that want gun control, okay? You want the government to protect you. Has it ever done that? When somebody's breaking into your house and you call the police, you're usually dead before they get there if it's a home robbery or an intruder that's intent on killing you. They're not there to protect you. FEMA, during Katrina, during Hurricane Sandy, where were they when you needed food? What am I getting at? You have a responsibility to feed, clothe, secure, and defend your family and loved ones. And every time you depend on the government to do it, they will fail you and in the process remove the rights from you and your fellow Americans. I hate to be real blunt with you people in Sandy Hook and in Aurora, but you're to blame for those kids dying because you did not take the responsibility to protect and to ensure that your children were protected in the right way, and that is by force of arms. It'll never be any different. I'm sorry. It is your fault for giving up your responsibility, your ability to respond to somebody who not only didn't do it, couldn't do it, and wouldn't do it. Because it's a gun-free zone at the school. So not even the teachers can protect themselves. You parents are responsible for the deaths of your children. I am sorry, but that's the way it is. You abrogated that responsibility that you have to somebody else. And the government talked you into it. I'm not disagreeing with you there. Stop agreeing with these criminals and these people that want to take over our lives hook, line, and sinker. We have been invaded by international bankers, international corporations, and they are setting this up to get rid of you in the long run. You take the responsibility, just like you go to your job every day and you work, right? You provide a home. What happens when people depend on the government for that? They're called welfare recipients, and they'll get cut off eventually too. Do not abrogate your responsibility. The rights of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights aren't given to you by government. They are required of you by God. They are responsibilities so that you have the ability to respond. Because nobody else will. Talking about that, they say that, Americans are against gun control. Well, 17 million gun background checks. That should tell you something. I was going to get into this killing of this DA over in Colorado, or this warden over there, corrections officer, the DA in Texas and some others. They're real quick to call it, white supremacists, but I'd be real careful about that. Just because there are white supremacists involved, and I don't like white supremacists, okay? Not neo-Nazis, those kinds of guys. Chances are that there are some involved, but it's starting to have the smell, especially this last shooting in Colorado of the intruder, where they're not telling much about that intruder. I had another guy who mentioned that this could be Mexican mafia. It's starting to look like it is. And of course they have, others that are involved with them in that money-making enterprise, okay? Yeah, all these criminals, whether they're white supremacists or, whatever. So this is bigger than just that, okay? There's probably some retribution going on here, people trying to muscle in on other stuff. The news can never tell you because it's all controlled. But it's starting to look like it's a turf war between crooked cops and lawyers and officials, I use that term loosely, and the cartels, okay? The drug lords. I think that's what's going on here. All right. Mett-T, everybody. Mett-T.